In our headlines on this Thursday, January 22nd, here in South Korea, the benchmark KOSPI index breaks past the 5,000 mark at the start of its session today, with investors betting on chips and cars before closing slightly below that level. Now, despite the dramatic rally on the local bourse, the country's economy grew 1.5% on year during the fourth quarter of last year, but contracted 0.3% on quarter. And South Korea's AI Basic Act goes into effect today and reportedly consolidates 19 separate AI bills into a unified framework, ranging from research funding to safety guidelines. The benchmark KOSPI index breaks past the 5,000 mark at the start of its session this morning before closing slightly below that level. Our Kim Jun-ong covers that rally and more.
South Korea's stock market has reached a historic milestone in an unexpected move that has stunned investors at home and abroad. The benchmark KOSPI climbed above the 5,000 level for the first time in its 70-year history, a mark long seen as a symbolic threshold. According to the Korea Exchange on Thursday, the index closed the session at 4,952.53. While it did not finish above 5,000, the KOSPI opened around 4,980 and surged past the milestone within just 1 minute of the opening bell. This is a blustering run, coming just 3 months after the index crossed 4,000 last October. The upswing came on the back of a strong Wall Street rally overnight. U.S. President Donald Trump backed away from a previously signaled tariff threat against European nations, triggering a sharp jump in U.S. stocks. That positive sentiment quickly spilled over into the Korean market. Leading the surge were heavyweight semiconductor stocks. Shares of Samsung Electronics gained over 4% intraday to hit a record 160,000 won, while SK Hynix also climbed to record levels. Attention is turning to what powered this rapid rally and what it signals ahead.
Since the start of the year, upward revisions to semiconductor earnings forecasts have driven chip stocks higher, helping accelerate the KOSPI's rise past the 5,000 mark. With strong earnings momentum intact, further upsides remain possible, though attention is turning to the timing of a peak in the chip cycle and potential volatility from the Trump administration.
Now that the dream of a KOSPI 5,000 era has become a reality, eyes are on how long investor optimism can keep this rally going. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, findings for the fourth quarter of 2025 show a quarterly economic contraction of 0.3% and an annual expansion of 1.5%. Our Ian Jin explains.
South Korea's central bank said Wednesday during a press briefing that in the October to December period of 2025, the country's economy unexpectedly dropped 0.3% from the previous quarter. The economy's first contraction in 6 months brought the country's real gross domestic product increase to 1% for 2025. The central bank had earlier forecast the fourth quarter GDP to expand 0.2% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But figures showed that it only grew 1.5% on a year-on-year basis for Q4, down from a 1.8% expansion in Q3. Bank of Korea official Lee Dong-won said that the slowdown was mainly due to weakness in construction investment, which sank 9.9% last year, compared with a 3.3% contraction in 2024. However, exports continued to grow, while private consumption and government spending both expanded. The optimistic semiconductor exports were estimated to have contributed as much as 0.9 percentage points to last year's economic growth. Excluding construction investment, growth figures would have been greatly different for South Korea.
I mentioned that construction weighed greatly on growth. If construction investment had been neutral in terms of its contribution to growth, last year's annual growth rate would have been 2.4%.
Looking ahead at 2026, the BOK projects the economy to grow 1.8% this year on the back of ongoing high demand for semiconductors, as well as continued increases in private consumption and exports and higher government spending. This is similar to the government's latest outlook of 2% and the International Monetary Fund's slightly revised forecast of 1.9%. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And amid the rampant presence of variables surrounding global trade and geopolitical matters, the price of gold continues to soar. And market experts believe the surge is here to stay. Our correspondent Park Jun-han was out and about.
The price of gold is skyrocketing day by day. And this is not just an upward trend that has been going on in the past few months. Even though the price of gold is rapidly rising, investors are actively buying it, an asset that does not decay, retains value, and is globally accepted.
My mother turned 60 this year, so I came to buy a gold bracelet as a commemorative gift. Gold prices have risen a lot recently, but I think they may continue to climb, so I felt it was better to buy it sooner rather than later.
The sharp rise in gold prices has been particularly evident over the last few years, and especially when U.S. President Donald Trump was inaugurated in January 2025. In the past 5 years, the price of gold has risen from around $1,852 per troy ounce to approximately $4,800. This is a 159.1% increase over that period. And when it comes to Korean won, the increase becomes far more pronounced. Over the same 5-year period, the purchase price of gold jumped from just 271,000 won per ton, or 3.75 grams, to 993,000 won. That marks a 266.4% increase. Although international gold prices have steeply risen, the hike is seen more prominently in Korea, with the dollar value against the Korean won appreciating by more than 33% in those 5 years. Alongside that, buying physical gold in Korea can add 15% to the price due to value-added tax and labor charges. Now, as you can see, this 1 kilogram gold bar I'm holding is worth more than 265 million Korean won, or roughly 180,000 US dollars. The managing director of the Korea Gold Exchange, whose company produces and sells billions of dollars worth of gold and silver annually in Korea, says global uncertainty has driven the steep price hikes.
Global economic instability, ongoing wars, and uncertainty surrounding the U.S. dollar's depreciation have all combined to push gold prices sharply higher, with new issues continuing to emerge, including the situation involving Greenland just yesterday. Uncertainty is intensifying, and that upward trend appears to be gaining further momentum.
Looking ahead, long-term gold prices will be shaped by a mix of inflationary trends, interest rates, and geopolitical risks. Alongside this, global economic uncertainty and monetary policy will also be key factors affecting prices. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
In other news, President Lee Jae-myung has called for greater commitment to rooting out scam crimes. Speaking at a weekly meeting with his top aides on this Thursday, he described such transnational crimes as vicious and highly threatening, warning they can escalate to diplomatic disputes. His remarks come after the Blue House announced that a special task force established directly under the president will repatriate South Korean suspects allegedly involved in Cambodia-based scam rings on Friday morning for investigation. These suspects are believed to have swindled around 48.6 billion won, roughly 33 million US dollars, from 869 Korean victims. South Korea's AI Basic Act goes into effect today and consolidates separate AI bills into a unified framework, ranging from research funding to safety guidelines. Our Kim Do-yeon tells us what this means and what industry insiders are saying.
South Korea's Framework Act on Artificial Intelligence Law has come into effect. Starting Thursday, the country becomes the first in the world to fully enforce a comprehensive legal AI regulatory framework. Passed in 2024, the law's goal is to both boost national competitiveness in AI and protect the public. One of the most critical aspects of the new rules is the high-impact AI designation. If an AI system is used in critical fields like healthcare, energy, hiring, or loan approvals, it faces strict oversight. Operators must have human managers in the loop and report their safety measures to the government. Transparency is also mandatory. Companies must now clearly label AI-generated content, including through tools like watermarking, so users know what they're looking at. The measures are now in a testing phase, so it will take some time for the results to become clear.
I mean, the big risk really is this. If the regulations are a bit too burdensome, then the question is, can the Korean government then adjust these regulations so that these AI companies are not going to be hindered with respect to the development because they're competing with other players globally, right? Like OpenAI, like other companies beyond the domestic market.
But startups and smaller firms are worried. They argue that complying with these complex safety and labeling rules requires money and manpower they just don't have. Recognizing this burden, the government is promising a soft landing. The Ministry of Science and ICT says it will suspend fines and investigations for at least 1 year.
But I think Korea being a first mover, I think is shaping the policy now going forward for a lot of countries who will now, I think, benchmark Korea's rules and see how they play out for their own regulatory systems.
They're also setting up a support desk to help companies figure out how to follow the new rules. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the political front, South Korea is scheduled to hold its general elections this June, and ahead of that event, the ruling Democratic Party and the Rebuilding Korea Party are exploring prospects of a merger. Our correspondent An Sang-jin has the latest.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party has proposed a merger with the Rebuilding Korea Party ahead of general elections this June. During an emergency press conference on Thursday, the DP's chairman Jong Chung-rae proposed an outright merger, as he noted that the spirit of the time for both parties aligns.
There is no reason to contest the June 3rd local elections separately. The two parties should move forward together as one team toward the shared goal of ensuring the success of the Lee Jae-myung administration.
Chung further urged for a swift formation of a working-level team to discuss the merger. Rebuilding Korea Party Chairman Cho Guk responded an hour after the announcement.
We will carefully listen to what the public has to say and our party members to determine the best path forward.
According to insiders, the two party leaders allegedly met late afternoon on Wednesday and shared their thoughts, reaching a broad consensus. However, this announcement was reportedly shared with only a small number of insiders beforehand, calling for internal consultation within the DP. Hong Ik-pyo, Senior Secretary for Political Affairs to the President, said that he had been informed in advance. The proposal comes as the two parties face growing competition in overlapping strongholds for the general election, including the southwestern region of the country. On the same day, the DP held a policy-focused lawmakers meeting to continue its discussion on the prosecution reform set for later this year. Key issues included the dual-track structure of the Serious Crimes Investigation Agency, supplementary investigation powers, and others surrounding the reform. Under the proposed overhaul, the prosecution's existing investigative powers would be transferred to the newly established Serious Crimes Investigation Agency under the Interior Ministry, while a prosecutorial authority would be given to the prosecution office, separating the functions of investigation and indictment. Once the government drafts a revised bill on the prosecution reform based on parliamentary deliberations, the Standing Committee will resume discussions. Lawmakers are looking to pass the legislation by February, and all eyes are on when and how a consensus will be reached on the revision. An Sang-jin, Arirang News.
And at the World Economic Forum in Davos this past Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump maintains his territorial claim over Greenland, but rules out the use of American force to acquire it. Our Lee Seung-jae covers his remarks.
President Donald Trump has signaled a major shift in his controversial push to bring Greenland under U.S. control, backing away from the use of military force while continuing to press his case diplomatically. Speaking Wednesday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Trump reiterated his belief that Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark, must fall under U.S. control for global and American security.
You know, when I see what's happening with Greenland, I wonder, because I want Greenland for security. I don't want it for anything else. We have so much rare earth, we don't know what to do with it. We don't need it for anything else.
Trump acknowledged that the United States could theoretically take the island through overwhelming military power, but stressed he would not do so. At the same time, Trump announced that he was canceling a planned round of tariffs on 8 European countries that oppose his proposal for Greenland. The decision followed talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, which Trump described as highly productive. Just days earlier, Trump had threatened to impose a 10% tariff on goods from Britain, France, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Finland starting February 1st, with rates rising to 25% by June if no deal was reached on what he called a complete U.S. purchase of Greenland. In a social media post, Trump said he and NATO leadership had established a framework for a future agreement covering Greenland and the broader Arctic region, calling it beneficial for both the United States and NATO allies. Despite the rollback on tariffs, tensions remain high. The European Parliament formally suspended ratification of a U.S. trade deal on Wednesday in protest, calling Trump's earlier tariff threats political blackmail. European lawmakers say negotiations will not resume until those threats are fully withdrawn. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the K-pop front, South Korean music label HYBE's US-based girl group Katseye is slated to perform at the 2026 Grammy Awards as a nominee for Best New Artist. The group is among 8 nominees set to take the stage at the ceremony on February 1st in Los Angeles. Formed following HYBE's global audition project, Dream Academy, Katseye debuted in the US back in 2024 and gained much attention after entering Billboard's Hot 100. The group recently released its new single, Internet Girl. Over in Spain, Barcelona's historic landmark Sagrada Familia is poised to crown its highest star this year to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the death of its architect, Antoni Gaudi. Our Cha Yun-kyung reports.
The light passing through the stained glass fills the interior, leaving visitors speechless. Amid the forest-like columns, it's easy to forget that construction is still ongoing.
I haven't visited often, maybe 3 or 4 times, but each time I am deeply moved. It is truly a spectacle.
All around, visitors stand still for a long time. The Sagrada Familia is no longer just a place to view. It has become a space to dwell in.
Beautiful. I sat down over there for like 15 minutes just staring and just in awe. So I love it.
The architect, Antoni Gaudi, knew that this church would not be completed during his lifetime. He saw only one of the towers finished. This space of wonder now enters a very special period this year.
June 10th marks the 100th anniversary of Antoni Gaudi's death. The year 2026 will be the year of him.
The central spire has been partially completed, and the vertical symbol Gaudi envisioned is now visible over the city. It has also set the record as the tallest church spire in the world. However, this architectural work is still ongoing, and the completion date remains uncertain. The Sagrada Familia is not just the work of a single architect. It is the result of a century of collective effort. Gaudi's unfinished designs continue to shine, even as people commemorate the 100th anniversary of his passing. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The U.S. Supreme Court on Wednesday signaled it will likely allow Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to stay in her job while she fights President Donald Trump's attempt to fire her. Trump previously told Cook she was fired over mortgage fraud allegations, which Cook denies. No president has ever fired a sitting Fed governor in the central bank's 112-year history. Several justices pressed the administration on why it gave Cook no formal notice or hearing, and multiple justices voiced skepticism about letting a president remove Fed officials without meaningful limits and how this could impact the Fed's independence. The court expects a decision by early summer. Meanwhile, Trump said on Wednesday in Davos that he was close to choosing a new Fed chair, adding he would prefer to keep White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett in his current role, as he called BlackRock bond manager Rick Rieder, quote, very impressive. Trump and his aides have also named Fed Governor Christopher Waller and former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh as candidates. Iranian state television has admitted for the first time that security forces killed more than 3,000 people during recent anti-government protests. Iranian state TV on Wednesday issued its first official death toll from recent protests through statements by the Interior Ministry and Iran's Martyrs Foundation. It said 3,117 people were killed, adding that 2,427 of the dead were civilians and security forces, without detailing the rest. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warned in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that Iran will, quote, fire back with everything we have if it faces attack, as the U.S. Navy is currently moving the USS Abraham Lincoln Career Strike Group toward the Middle East. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says trillions of dollars in new investment is needed to support the global artificial intelligence boom. During talks with BlackRock CEO Larry Fink at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, Huang dismissed fears of an AI bubble, saying the opportunity is extraordinary, even if investment totals look massive. The Nvidia chief declared this is the largest infrastructure build-out in history, urging Europe and global industries to aggressively expand energy supplies and data centers to capture the technology's economic benefits. On jobs, he argued demand can rise even as AI spreads. Prince Harry fought back tears in a London courtroom on Wednesday while accusing the Daily Mail of making his wife Meghan Markle's life an absolute misery. The Duke of Sussex and 6 other claimants, including singer Elton John, are suing publisher Associated Newspapers over alleged privacy violations dating from the 1990s to the 2010s. The lawsuit alleges unlawful information gathering such as voicemail hacking, phone bugging, and deception. Associated Newspapers called the accusations preposterous smears and said its reporters relied on legitimate sources. Harry described the legal battle as traumatic, but a public duty to hold the media responsible, telling the court that intrusive tabloid tactics have only worsened since he launched his lawsuit in 2022. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Temperatures are hitting record-breaking lows day after day, and today marks the peak of this cold wave around the country. A cold wave warning is in effect for northern parts of Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, parts of Chungcheong-do, and Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces. For most other regions across the country, a cold wave advisory has also been issued. Snow is still falling in areas of the west coast of the Jeollado provinces, Jeju Island and Ulleung-do, and more is expected today in the southwest as well as Jeju Island and Ulleung-do. Tomorrow morning will start off cold at -12 degrees in Seoul, -16 degrees in Chuncheon. Highs will rise to -2 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 5 degrees in Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju. Looking ahead to tomorrow, snow is expected across most parts of the country, except for Seoul and the Gyeongsang-do provinces. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.